So tell us how your life intersected with Brian's, why you wanted to make this movie, and how your grandparents were involved.
Wow. um, so it all started when I was dating my now wife, Jamie Newman. She's over there. And I was looking for my first US topic as to feature. So I was sitting in a coffee shop in Tel Aviv. It was 5, 6 years ago, and I saw this article in a newspaper. It's Haaretz paper, which is the New York Times of Israel. And I saw this montage of kind of a Brian Widener from being tattooed, fully tattooed, to clean face. And I read the story behind that about him and about Julie and about Daryl Mont Jenkins, and I was blown away by that. And then I went to my grandfather, who is my mentor and my big love, and he read it with me, and he said that this is something that I need to do. So he gave me the green light to do that, and I needed it because it's not an easy story. But he taught us compassion. He taught us about acceptance, about dialogue, and it was important for him. He accepted the new generation of Germans, and he said they're not the same. And it took him some time after he came to Israel after the war, but he taught us that. So I got in touch with Brian Widener through MSNBC. I got his email. I wrote him an email about my grandparents, about myself, and we set up a Skype call. My wife and I Skype with him and his wife, and he told us that if we're really serious, we should come to Albuquerque to meet him and his wife. We flew to Albuquerque, we met with them, and they signed the life rights over a napkin. So I wanted to tell this, so I started writing the script with him helping me, and no one in the States wanted to give me money to tell the story because they said that, there's no really neo-Nazis in the States, it's just a myth. It's just a bunch of like 5, 6 people in the Midwest. It's not really a thing, and Hillary is about to become president, so it's not. So I was bummed, and I was, and then Trump got elected. Charlottesville happened, the synagogue massacre, the whole thing became crazy, and we did the short. So that's the story of it.
Well, Jamie, when this project came to you, what did you think? What did you feel? Did you have any fear, anxiety? I mean, you had to go pretty dark.
It came to me in a slightly kind of obtuse fashion. One of the producers on the film, Oren Moverman, I met him for a film that he was considering directing. And we met around Christmas time, and it was days away from me proposing to my now wife. So I was kind of nervous about that, and we talked a lot about that, and marriage and kids and family and stuff. But I got the sense pretty quick that film specifically was never going to be made. He just had it wasn't going to be the next thing he did. So that's why we talked about all this other stuff. And then shortly after Christmas into the new year, I got this script, and I remember thinking, like, what on earth did he see in me during that meeting that he would think that I could do something like this? He said, my friend Guy is directing it. I think you should meet him. And I didn't know anything about Brian Widener upon reading it. Obviously saw how great a writer Guy was, and how it was such a complicated, complex character that I would get to play. And we actually met in Virginia. And we had long discussions, and kind of had long discussions up until we started the cameras rolling. But I went up to meet Brian, hung out with him for a while. And all the while, the timeline of this is that the country is exploding, and it seems like the world is exploding. And I was always kind of like, God, is this the right kind of climate for us to be making this film in? Is this the right thing to be doing? But it felt like a huge wake-up call, honestly. And what I keep seeing more often than not is that these people in these groups, and they appear to be kind of radically normalized to such a horrendous degree that I never want that to be the case. I want them, and I think that's what Guy's intention always was, is to paint these people for who they are, the world as it really is. And I thought that was the correct perspective and the correct way to tell the story.
How did that go when you met Brian? I'm curious, how do you play a character like that without judging him?
I mean, it's very. I mean, I have a really hard time with forgiveness, just in my own life. So, you know, they always tell you, like, you shouldn't judge the character that you're playing. It's going to be impossible for you to play them if you're always judging them. So I was very hesitant to go up and meet him. I was kind of scared to meet him. I'd done my research by that point. Guy had painted a very clear picture of who he was from the script. You know, this man was the guy that law enforcement was always very concerned about. They always thought this was the guy that was the most insightful. He was the enforcer. He was the thug. He was.
They call him the Pitbull.
Sure, they called him the Pitbull. Yeah, exactly. So, and you've seen what he looks like. So I imagined kind of meeting that. Honestly,
Did you circle the coffee shop 5 times before you?
no, I saw a guy like on the drive to him. I saw another guy with his hand out of his car, like waving a pistol around. So I was like, okay, this, I guess.
Well, you're in the right neighborhood.
Sure. This must be getting close.
I'm getting close.
No, but upon what is crazy is you open the guy opens the door and if you didn't know that that's the way he looked, you would never know. I mean, he's truly in that sense been given a gift of a new life. But beyond that, and you know, he was very incredibly generous with his time, incredibly articulate human being, would often interrupt the interviews to go and pick up his kids. I would say intensely paranoid, as kind of Guy has mentioned. He's going to live a life of reckoning and a life of atonement, but he's choosing a better path, you know, and he's been given that by the kindness of other people, and he knows that, I think.
Danielle, I sort of felt like Julie was as a stand-in for us, the viewer. You know, she was struggling to love him, struggling to understand him and accept him, and sort of reconcile all this. Have you ever known anybody like that in your life? And how do you love a neo-Nazi?
I don't know. It took me a while to figure that one out. Honestly, yeah. When I took on the role, it was that thing of how do I not judge this character? Because in my brain, it was like, you meet this person, you know what he is. Why are you with him? Why are you pursuing it? And that was really difficult to me. I had to talk to Guy a lot about that. I was like, but why? But why? And Guy kept saying, you know, it's not, they don't think the way that you do. Like, we all think very differently. And I had to go back to her history, and she grew up in the movement. Like, her dad was in it, and that was all she knew. Her boyfriends before that were in it. Like, she didn't know any other way of life, and she was trying to get out of it and struggling because the only work she could get was in it. And it's this thing of where she was still living in that world, trying not to. So when she meets someone that she sees has a soul, that has a heart, that is also in it, it's almost like they can help each other get out in a weird way. I think she sensed that, and she saw that before he saw it in himself. You know, Brian's often said, like, Julie really was such a huge reason, like, why he was able to get out. It like pushed him to actually take the steps to do it. And that's how I kind of came to the character. And also, she's a mom, and she loved her kids more than anything she kind of knew growing up. And so that was kind of how I found my way in and stopped judging her.
I wondered what you guys did together to establish the relationship before Guy started rolling.
I think we were always trying to, like, figure out why these people choosing to do things that we wouldn't do. That was always a kind of battle that we were up against, right? I mean, it always, you know, just from one scene to the next, they kind of start making these very strange decisions and start acting in ways that I couldn't recognize. You know, I was always trying to, like, kind of see things through a kind of rational prism, you know, and Guy was always like, yeah, that's completely incorrect. These are irrational people. That's not the way to do it.
Well done, and thank you for joining us to talk about it.